before and after the rain. Rubens Barrichello was out quick early, as was Mika Häkkinen and championship leader Michael Schumacher. But the man they will all have to catch tonight is Häkkinen's teammate David Coulthard, whose weather forecasters did a great job letting him know to go hard early.
Obviously, I'm sure like all the teams have weather forecast and people out there spotting, so we were told when to expect the rain. It was actually running a little bit late, but nonetheless it was good to get out at that time, and obviously the rest of the session was taken care of by the rain.
After the rain hit, there was plenty of drivers having trouble, including Jean Alesi in the Prost. Michael Schumacher also had little trouble as he took it to the limit to catch Coulthard. Although he couldn't quite get there, he was happy with being in second place.
We're in the first row, and yeah, there was the opportunity to go as well a bit faster. I had a mistake in turn 5. I'm running wide, locked up the brakes. But I guess through this session everybody had his little bits to carry and not really getting out the absolute maximum. I'm quite happy to be where I am.
Häkkinen was not quite so happy after finishing third fastest.
Well, I was not 100% confident with all the free practices in all weekend, to be honest. And the qualifying proves that way the car is not in optimum performance at the moment for me.
Joining Mika on the second row of the grid will be the second Ferrari of Rubens Barrichello. Ralf Schumacher, again just a tick behind in 5th place. Rounding out the top 6, Jarno Trulli in the Jordan.
Well, David Coulthard on pole position. Michael Schumacher, that man again, yet again on the front row next to him. He was very quick in qualifying this morning. Mika Häkkinen in the second row alongside Barrichello. Ralf Schumacher, good position for him in 5th. Jarno Trulli in the Jordan in 6th on the 3rd row. Fisichella, Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar, qualifying quite well. Villeneuve, Frentzen, Jenson Button, Pedro de la Rosa in 12th. Verstappen, Wirtz, Denez, Herbert, Alesi, Zonta, and Mika Salo, Genet, Makasan and Heidfeld. Now Heidfeld is on the last row of the grid, starting dead last, because all his times were wiped off and he was basically disqualified from practice because his car was found to be 1 or 2 kilos underweight. So that's why he's down the back.
I get a lot of people ask me the question, when Formula One they've spent so much money on the cars, how does something like that happen?
Well, I mean, I just laughingly said you'd hate them to be building aeroplanes, wouldn't you? But, I mean, basically, Formula One is about who can stretch the elastic the longest. And it's basically, they're all out there trying to stretch it longer than anybody else. And, of course, when that happens, it's always going to break. And, you know, these cars are to the absolute limit. I mean, if they can put a nut on the car which is lighter than the McLaren nut, they'll do so. And, of course, I think in Prost's case, they altered the bodywork into a different configuration, and in doing so they may have cut something off or altered it in such a way that they cut 1 kilo off, waited after qualifying, which they do with most cars, and bang, it was under the limit and you're down the back of the grid, John.
David Coulthard also carrying that rib injury is still there. All right, let's quickly go through some points of interest. Dramas continue for Prost after Mercedes Motorsport boss Norbert Haig confirmed that they won't be supplying the French team with engines in 2001. Prost's current supplier, Peugeot, has indicated an interest in buying a stake in the Frenchman's team, but this now looks unlikely. Thanks to reports that the Japanese businessman, yet another one, has bought Peugeot's entire Formula One engine program. They just keep doing it. They've got plenty of money. Mark Webber was punted out of the 4th round of the Formula 3000 Championship this weekend at the Nürburgring. A rain-drenched race saw him the innocent victim of a first-lap collision with 2 other cars. It's his second DNF this season, leaving him 3rd in the championship. Still a pretty good effort, and I guess you're going to have a couple of bad races throughout the season. And just in case you haven't heard, the last couple of weeks, James Courtney, a big fan of this kid, finished 4th in the latest round of the British Formula Ford Series. He now shares first spot in the championship with British driver Mark Taylor, and this young bloke has done everything the right way. I had the chance to meet him at a Camps dinner a couple of years ago. He's a delight.
Yeah, and he's doing it the right way. He came up through go-karting. He was world championship twice in go-karting. He's just doing it quietly, but you know, I think he's got a big future. I really do. And you know, I mean, obviously he and Mark are just 2 of many Australians that are currently racing in Europe and America. and we'd love to be able to mention them all and tell you all exactly what was going on and when and so forth, but unfortunately time restraints just, we just can't do it all the time.
They are doing so well, and we'll keep you up to date as their results come through. All right, we'll take a break. We're at the Great Place to Race tonight, so buckle down. The weather could play a role in this one as well. Waiting for cars to go out now. Now, it's a bit of controversy here. We've just been informed that Nick Heidfeld has been scrapped tonight. He's not racing.
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing we were told just a little earlier that he was going to be starting from the rear of the grid, and now we've had information just this second come through that now they're going to flick him. So he'll be a very annoyed spectator, I would imagine. One thing I did notice on the grid then, Daz, is that Coulthard's tyres are very, very scrubbed, and I was always under the impression that you had to have 4 distinct lines and they had to be at a certain tread depth, and the front of Coulthard's tyre, or the front tyres on that McLaren, looked almost like slicks.
They were scrubbed down, weren't they?
Well, and also keeping in mind, if you have a look at the weather, look at that sky, given the fact that he has got very scrubbed tyres and it does start to rain, that could put him at a major disadvantage.
Yeah, well, the outside line there really did look, was almost invisible, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it does look like we'll get some weather here. I mean, this area is notorious for weather moving in and out of it.
Yeah, well, it's, once again, it's surrounded by mountains and the weather just moves in and, comes out in a matter of minutes. In the Formula 3000 race yesterday, it sort of dumped down. It only came in and went for about 5 minutes or thereabouts, but it was just enough to cause chaos in the Formula 3000 race.
Heinz-Harald Frentzen, this is a circuit he likes. I mean, he knows it like the back of his hand. I'd have thought he'd been a bit quicker.
Yeah, but he's still not bad, is he? I mean, he's relatively, he's up there, and yeah, but you're right, I would have thought in the fatherland he would be pulling out something a little bit extra special, and but he always seems to come good in the race, Frentzen. And he's been doing some really good starts lately. Schumacher was quickest in the warm-up, and I think Hakkinen was second quickest in the warm-up this morning. So, as usual, we can expect Michael to put on a blinding sort of a race pace.
Well, the way the grid is set up, and there's the Ferrari camp looking, and now we're in the McLaren camp, but the way this grid's set up, I mean, it really is set up for a couple of, an interesting race to the first pit stop, because now we're going to break these races up.
Yeah, well, we do, and that's where they get most exciting now after the first pit stops.
You may get a quick look at the tyres here if we...
yeah, you have a look at them.
They're going the other way. All right, well, as the cars make their way now, of course, the man that's the voice of Grand Prix Racing, Murray Walker, and he's joined, of course, by Martin Brundle. Let's cross over to him now, our coverage of race. Settle back and enjoy it. There's the tyres there. Great place to race.
His chief rival, Michael Schumacher, behind David Coulthard. There is Mika Hakkinen, behind Mika Hakkinen, the man I told you to watch. Look on the right, the third car back, Ralf Schumacher. Watch the lights then when they're all on, they'll go out, there'll be a pause, and the race will be go! Good one by David Coulthard and Mika Hakkinen. Streaks between the two of them. Is that what they were talking about? Is that what they were talking about? And Rubens Barrichello challenging. So Michael Schumacher in second position between the two McLarens, and then Barrichello off goes one of the Jordans, and somebody is trailing along at the back. It is Marc Genet in the Minardi, who's had a very late start. But unlike last year when Pedro Diniz went off, and that is Trulli, Jarno Trulli, who was starting about in 8th position, and it looks as though he's out of the race already. So it's McLaren Ferrari, and then behind you can see them as we ride with Heinz-Harald Frentzen now, and they're climbing up out of the Dunlop curve up towards the left and right at turns 8 and 9, up to the big curve, the sweeping right-hander, that is turn 10, and now then the Vidal chicane. So they're pretty well spread out as they come towards us now, with Mika Hakkinen leading Schumacher, with David Coulthard down from first on the grid to third in the race. Rubens Barrichello started fourth. He is still in fourth position, but in fifth position, it is Jacques Villeneuve. Remember what I told you? He has already gained 4 places, a magnificent start.
Yes, great start from Villeneuve. The car that rocketed away was Mika Häkkinen. I was watching them, they're right outside our window for the start, and Coulthard got away well. Michael Schumacher not so well, but then Coulthard lost a bit of ground on the upshift to second. Häkkinen just catapulted through. I'm sure we'll see a replay at some time from the German producer here, but I really would like to see that again. But I'm absolutely sure now that the first 4 cars on the track have got completely different fuel loads.
Yeah, and this morning Mika Häkkinen was 9/1000ths of a second slower than Michael Schumacher's Ferrari. That's how closely matched these cars are. Now we are on lap 2 out of 67 laps is this race, and Jean Alesi is in 14th position, the man we're riding with, chasing Jenson Button in the Williams as Villeneuve goes through. Behind Villeneuve is Ralf Schumacher, who has been passed by the Canadian. Fisichella is in 7th place. Eddie Irvine is in 8th position in the Jaguar. So this start, and Michael Schumacher is now really challenging Mika Häkkinen.
Yes, Michael Schumacher designed that corner when they changed this circuit. He loves that kind. We've seen him win races by overtaking into that Vidal chicane. It just suits his attacking driving style completely. So Michael will be shaping up there whenever he gets half a chance to have a look down the inside of Häkkinen.
And he's the fastest man on the track, 1 minute 22.6. Michael Schumacher has just gone round in 1.4 seconds than the fastest lap last year, which was done by Mika Häkkinen. And Ralf Schumacher is hanging on behind Jacques Villeneuve. Here they come behind us. There's Villeneuve, Schumacher, Fisichella, but Michael Schumacher is now on a charge. Here is the proof as they come up towards us.
Yes, Jenson Button having a bad start, now dropping down another place on that last lap, down to 14th. Johnny Herbert down in 18th and running last but 2. Here's a replay of the start. There's the wheel spin. I can see black lines outside my window off the grid. Here we go now. And Häkkinen just got the absolutely perfect start from 3rd on the grid. The others are away reasonably well. Look, and just rockets through the middle. We've heard that Frentzen has blown up somewhere around the racetrack as we're watching this replay. And look at that, the perfect getaway from Häkkinen. How he and Michael Schumacher didn't touch, I'll never know. And then Coulthard having to defend what became 1st down to 3rd from Barrichello.
Well, let's repeat the fact as you watch the Sauber of Pedro Diniz go off the track. And here is Frentzen retiring, and his teammate Jarno Trulli is already out of the race. Well, you can see what the problem is there. His Mugen Honda engine has obviously had enough already. So both Jordans are out of the race, and we're only on lap 4 now as Frentzen waves to his countryman, and Häkkinen comes towards us. Schumacher 2nd, Coulthard 3rd. And look at the way that Michael Schumacher is pushing the McLaren in front of him. And I remind you, Michael Schumacher is on the harder tyre. Mika Häkkinen's got a beautiful balance on the softer Bridgestone, and he's definitely got the advantage at the present moment, notwithstanding the fact that Michael Schumacher has made the fastest lap. In 7th position behind Ralf Schumacher, it's Fisichella. 8th is Eddie Irvine. 9th is De La Rosa in the arrows. Verstappen is 10th in the second arrows, and Schumacher is continuing to harry, push, get his front wing right under the rear wing of Mika Häkkinen's McLaren as they storm round this track. Now, the record lap here is held by Heinz-Harald Frentzen, just a whisker under 130 miles an hour in the Williams in 1997. Different specification then. The cars were faster. Very little in it now, and Schumacher is continuing to push. We're on lap 4 already.
Yeah, Schumacher's got the faster car, and I'm sure his game plan did not include Mika Häkkinen rocketing off of 3rd place on the grid, because I think now, if we're right about the fuel load on this Ferrari, Michael Schumacher really expected and needed to be zooming off into the distance. A man probably quite content at the moment is Coulthard back there in 3rd place, if he's running a lot of fuel. And I think it's a smart idea this afternoon. You need as big a window as possible give you the best chance of needing to come in for fuel when it starts to rain. So you need it's worth carrying a bit more fuel to widen that window, if you understand me.
And did you hear what Martin said? Not if it starts to rain, when it starts to rain, because we're virtually certain that it's going to do so. And the teams have been frantically revising their strategies to take account of that. Now, Mika Häkkinen will be quite happy. I think he's got a good balance on the softer tyres. He's leading the race. He can take his line wherever he likes. And Schumacher's got to make him make a mistake before he can get past. And Mika Häkkinen, twice a world champion, is not going to do that.
Well, that's two camera angles where I've seen spots of rain on the lens, so for sure it's getting a little bit damper. Looking out of the window, no signs of umbrellas out here with the crowd at the moment, but Michael Schumacher appears to have a much better handling car at this stage of the race.
The first two are stretching away slightly from the second two. Häkkinen leads Schumacher, there they are, and David Coulthard is 2 seconds behind them with Rubens Barrichello tucked under his wing. Jacques Villeneuve is 6 seconds behind Barrichello. Fisichella is right behind Villeneuve in 6th position. Ralf Schumacher is 11 seconds behind the leader in 7th place in the Williams. Then it's De La Rosa. And hello, what's happening here? Off goes the Sauber again. And this time, again, it is Pedro Diniz. He does not like this circuit. It treated him very badly at the start last year. He's been off twice already, but after last year, he's a very lucky man to be alive. And we've got news from Louise Goodman.
Yeah, I'm standing here with Jarno Trulli. Jarno, we saw your teammate go out with an engine failure. What happened to you?
I'm really disappointed because I had a very good start. I was trying to overtake Ralf on the straight, and suddenly I had a hit from the back, and probably physically lost the control of this car and just didn't lift off, and it just hit me on the back, so the car was damaged and I had to retire. It's a shame because I had a good start, and I can't believe that we did that.
Difficult day for the team, bad luck, Jarno.
Well, Jarno Trulli was 6th on the grid, Fisichella was 7th on the grid. There have been quite a lot of complaints yesterday in practicing about people holding other people up, but very, very bad luck for Jarno Trulli as the leaders come through and go into their 7th lap. And now Michael Schumacher is pushing again. He's just had the fastest first sector of all this afternoon. This circuit, like all of them, is split up into 3 sectors. But David Coulthard is now, as Fisichella attacks, Fisichella in the blue Benetton is attacking Jacques Villeneuve. That's what you're looking at now, fighting for 5th position. And behind them, look at the orange arrows of Pedro de la Rosa. He's in 7th position ahead of Ralf Schumacher. The arrows are going magnificently here. They were the fastest cars of all in a straight line in Spain, Jos Verstappen and Pedro de la Rosa. They've been going extremely well here. It's a very, very tidy motor car. It's powered by the Supertech engine. Pedro de la Rosa is now showing, after a full season of Grand Prix racing in his first year last year, that he is a very good driver. He's got a very good car. To prove it, he is in 7th position.
Yes, I don't know what happened to Ralf Schumacher. I think off screen he's had some kind of drama. He's back down in 8th position. So now, as you rightly point out, Murray, it's Fisichella, look, giving Villeneuve a very, very hard time with the 2 arrows, or certainly one of them still there. De La Rosa in 7th, and that car's been going well all through the practices.
It looks as though Mika Häkkinen is going to be able to stave off Michael Schumacher. When are we going to be getting pit stops? Well, if I'm right and they're one stopping, most of them, it'll be round about lap 33, but could be a lot later, depending on fuel load.
Yes, a new fastest lap of the race from Coulthard in 3rd place. So he's clearly finding, as his fuel load goes down, his balance is coming back to where he needs it. Häkkinen and Schumacher level pegged at the front on a 122.3.
Now, I have to say, Martin, I'm a bit disappointed this year in comparison with expectations with Rubens Barrichello. Yes, he was 2nd in Australia, but and he was 3rd in Spain, but he just doesn't seem to have been on it the way that Michael Schumacher has been. We're riding with Barrichello now. He's in 4th position in the Ferrari, and he's 1.5 seconds behind David Coulthard's McLaren, which is the car that you can see ahead of us. And Rubens just does not seem to have been able to get the balance right on the Ferrari. I've got absolutely no doubt that the cars have got equal specification. And there you see Schumacher's Ferrari. You can see that he's still right up with Mika Häkkinen. They're coming through to complete the 8th lap now. in this 67-lap race. Hakkinen leads Schumacher. They are 2.2 seconds ahead of David Coulthard, just going over the grid now. Barrichello in the background is fourth. The next man through is Jacques Villeneuve. Sixth position is Fisichella. They are still virtually tied together.
Yes, another new fastest lap now, this time Michael Schumacher, but it's very, very close, still a 22.2. So Schumacher edging ever closer to Hakkinen, and really there's not much there. The first four, 22.2, 22.2, 22.4, 22.3, and then they're well over a second a lap quicker than the rest of the field.
Now, it's my belief, as I said earlier on, that these harder tyres start marginally to deteriorate in terms of performance, not in terms of construction, after about 10 laps. Well, Schumacher is still in that second place. We're on lap 9 now, and those softer tyres of Mika Hakkinen are going to start coming in as Schumacher has a look nearly to confound me, but Mika Hakkinen knows he's there. He can see that scarlet blob in his right and left mirrors as the McLaren twists and turns round this Nürburgring.
Well, we've seen Michael Schumacher hounding Hakkinen before, and he has not been able to force him into a mistake. Maybe the Hakkinen of the old days would have, but this Mika Hakkinen, I have to say, is very, very rare. You see him making unforced errors, so Michael is darting around the track, just trying to distract him at any possible opportunity.
133 Grand Prix behind Mika Hakkinen. He's got a lot of experience with Lotus originally. Here is Coulthard third, Barrichello fourth, and Sauber are readying their wheels and tyres for a stop. Now, is it going to be for Mika Salo, who is in 15th position, or Pedro Diniz, who is 19th? And look at De La Rosa in the orange arrows. De La Rosa right up behind Jacques Villeneuve. De La Rosa is 7th, Jacques Villeneuve is 6th, and Fisichella has moved up into 5th position in the Benetton. It's fast and furious behind the two batches of two which are leading this European Grand Prix. Hakkinen, Schumacher is the first batch of two. Coulthard, Barrichello is the second, and then Fisichella, Villeneuve, De La Rosa together.
Yes, I saw Coulthard make a mistake in the first sector of this lap, but there's definitely more rain coming down at the moment. And Barrichello right up the gearbox. It's not in view, but Barrichello, you're watching Hakkinen and Schumacher. Just behind that is Coulthard, just ahead of the sister Ferrari of Michael Schumacher.
Rain
right behind him, so definitely more rain coming down. And I'm looking to see if Barrichello made any kind of move on Coulthard for third and fourth place.
Now, we had a Formula 3000 race yesterday, absolute mayhem. When the rain came down, this place turned into a skating rink. The asphalt is smooth, and these tyres have got minimal grip when it gets wet, and you've got to have a feather touch on the throttle. 800 horsepower behind each of these drivers, and they're absolutely on the ragged edge of sticking on the circuit when it's dry, never mind when it's wet. And you saw confirmation of what Martin said. Barrichello is right up with Coulthard.
And the Ferrari is definitely working better in these tricky conditions. Both Ferrari drivers able to put, and this is how Fisichella took Villeneuve. Villeneuve couldn't find traction out of the Vidal into the Coca-Cola, the last turn. Fisichella, neat, tidy, smooth, decisive, right up the inside. And as we know now, De La Rosa then starts applying pressure to Villeneuve. James, what can you tell us?
Well, Martin, of course, Michael Schumacher is on the hard of the two tyres, and we saw last year that as the rain falls and you get more and more standing water, they perform much worse than the super soft tyres which Mika Hakkinen has on. So at the moment he's doing well, but as more rain falls, and I can tell you it's falling more and more steadily now. Tremendous atmosphere here.
James, Michael's got a real run on Hakkinen. Hakkinen's going to have to defend his line, otherwise Schumacher's going to outbrake him. Well, you made that too easy there, Mika. You had to defend that. 400-500 metres, 300-400 metres earlier. Too easy for Michael Schumacher. No good having a look now.
Well spotted, Martin. Beautiful, beautiful drive by Michael Schumacher, who has to make... Hakkinen gives way. The Ferrari mechanics wave in delight. So now it is Ferrari, McLaren, McLaren, Ferrari, and that yellow and red flag is to indicate that the circuit is getting wet. They'll know that. They'll see these raindrops coming towards them and bouncing on their visors. And now, remember, Michael Schumacher is the absolute rain master of Formula One. One of the greatest drives I've ever seen as we see this replay of Michael Schumacher diving up the inside of Mika Hakkinen, who has to stay out. tuck in behind the Ferrari as they come into the chicane, and that is where Michael Schumacher brilliantly passed Jean Alesi's Ferrari years ago when Schumacher was with Benetton to win the European Grand Prix, because Schumacher has won this race twice already, 94 and 95.
So you'll see the red and yellow striped flags waving, normally referred to as the oil flags, but actually it's the slippery track flag. And Michael Schumacher, he may have slightly harder compound tyres on, but he is excellent in this kind of situation, second guessing how much grip there's going to be in a corner before you arrive. And now when they're passing over some sections of the track, now this is Barrichello behind Coulthard. Does he have a go up the inside into turn one? This is a replay, but I don't know the outcome. I'm assuming Coulthard on the better line into the corner. No, Barrichello's gone through. Where's Coulthard? We're not showing Barrichello in third place on the computer at the moment. He'll have to go through the next section, so maybe it's Ferrari 1 and 3, McLaren 2 and 4 now.
Well, let's have a look. It is, because Barrichello has passed David Coulthard, and that is a confirmation of the fact that in these weather conditions, the Ferraris have got the better handling. Now, in recent years, there was no doubt about the fact that the McLaren had got the faster car. Ferrari have been working to improve their car. Let's have a look and see what's happening here on this replay as off spins the arrows of Jos Verstappen. Jos Verstappen, the Dutchman, who was down in 14th position, and that lets Mika Salo in the Sauber through ahead of him.
Look at this, Murray. Michael Schumacher nearly 3 seconds faster on the previous lap than Mika Hakkinen, so that's absolutely incredible. They've obviously put off goes the Minardi.
Genet and Johnny Herbert, you'll notice, last year's winner, this year in the Jaguar, has come in for a very early stop. He's decided, I presume, to go on to rain tyres. Now we are on lap 13 out of 67. There you see Herbert exiting. It doesn't look to me as though he is on rain tyres. It's very difficult to tell when the wheels are rotating as quickly as they are. But just look at the lead already that Michael Schumacher, having passed Mika Hakkinen, has built up over the McLaren driver. And Rubens Barrichello in the second Ferrari is catching Hakkinen. He was about 5 seconds behind him. He's now 3.3 seconds. There is Hakkinen looking visibly, to me, slower than Schumacher and Barrichello as he rounds turn 13, followed by David Coulthard.
Yes, now remember what I said at the beginning of the programme, that if you go 3 or 4 laps losing 10, 12 seconds a lap, then you may as well be on the other tyres. Now which they're doing, they're now 14 seconds off the dry pace that they started this race at. Maybe they should be coming in. Yes, I think they should now be in, getting some wet tyres on. But a lot of them are hanging on. Now is the moment for some wet tyres. But the problem is second-guessing the weather. Will it stop raining and dry out immediately? I think they should now be in for wets, and I'm expecting them anytime soon.
As De La Rosa 7th challenge. Here is Verstappen coming in the arrows. Behind him, Mika Salo in the Sauber. And behind David Coulthard, who is in 4th place, Fisichella is on his own in the Benetton. But what a struggle behind him as off spins again the Minardi. This is a replay of Marc Genet. Jacques Villeneuve, De La Rosa, Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar, and Ralf Schumacher are absolutely together on the circuit, fighting for 6th position. There's 6th, 7th, 8th and 9th, but 4 car lengths covers them. As Genet, who has spun off and lost his front wing, you see, comes in for a new nose cone and wing assembly. Michael Schumacher leads on lap 14 out of 67, 53 laps to go.
Well, Schumi stayed on the racetrack. I mean, I can't see where the weather's coming from, but Schumi's decided to stay. I mean, he's barely on the throttle as he comes over the line. Let's see his lap time. It's a 41. That's 19 seconds slower. It takes you 30 seconds to make a pit stop. Okay, you've got to do another 30 seconds to come in and change the tyres again. And what was going on there, Murray?
No, Ralf Schumacher doing the same as his brother as Pedro Diniz spins off. This is what the rain is doing. In comes David Coulthard from 4th position. But Ralf Schumacher's doing like his brother. He's driving magnificently in the wet. He's gone ahead of Jacques Villeneuve up into 6th position. David Coulthard goes out in about 7.4 seconds. And of course, he's got a new set of tyres on lap 15. And David Coulthard exits the pit lane as Fisichella comes through, still on his original tyres in 5th position. Now, this race is going to be a commentator's nightmare from now on as cars pour in and Eddie Irvine in the Jaguar comes out behind De La Rosa still.
I think it's going to be a commentator's dream, to be honest, Murray, because we're going to see action all through the afternoon.
That is true.
As these people guess, second guess, change their minds or whatever, but certainly on those lap times, they're better doing 2 or 3 laps on the wet. The wet rubber can often be harder than the dry rubber, but because it's got a lot more cuts in it, the tread moves around, the blocks move around, generates more heat. It's a different type of compounding that gives more grip in cool conditions. So we know the Ferrari mechanics are out in the pit lane too. I think they'll have to respond to, yes, and that is Michael in the pit lane. Coming through what is a very slow last corner, and then over the white line at just 80 kilometers per hour. He's got to hit the button, and there are his team. He's got to hope he doesn't run over them as he did in Spain, but that was not his fault in the Catalonia Grand Prix, and I don't know if James is there.
And behind him is Mika Häkkinen. So they come in first and second. Häkkinen stops. There he is in the background. There is Fisichella coming in. So all the leaders are coming in now. And you watch Schumacher exit after 12.1 seconds. That's a very long stop. How does Mika Häkkinen's time compare?
Problem for Häkkinen's car, Murray. Long time putting the right rear on. So Häkkinen quite slow away. Now something's coming. He'll beat that out of the pit lane. So I think he lost just a few seconds there while they had a slight drama. And look, Coulthard is right up there with Michael Schumacher.
Coulthard, who has stopped. Michael Schumacher has stopped. Schumacher is now just ahead of David Coulthard as they come up behind Jenson Button. Jenson Button in the Williams. And
now, Michael's on his out lap. He doesn't know how much grip there is. Coulthard's now on his first flying lap, and that's why Michael's having to defend quite aggressively there with David Coulthard, whose tyres are that bit warmer, and he's got more knowledge of the racetrack.
So, lap 16, here is the order at the present moment as you watch Schumacher and Coulthard and Jenson Button keeping his Williams in between them. He's let Schumacher through. He's refusing to be passed by David Coulthard. This is costing Coulthard dear in the McLaren as Jenson Button fights for position and to avoid being lapped, which he has now been.
No, that's for position, Murray. Because he hasn't been in, Button, although he's on the wrong tyres, Button is actually in 7th place. Coulthard's taken that 7th place away from him, but he is on wets, but it has, as you pointed out, cost him dearly, and that will obviously be Rubens Barrichello's stop. Here he comes now. He should peel into the... Oh, even a job getting in the pit lane, look.
You can see how slippery it is. It's a long, long drag into the pit lane. Look for the yellow line where they hit the rev limiter to slow them down to the mandatory 80 miles an hour maximum. That is it. Now Barrichello looks for his pit crew. Remember what happened last week, the week before last in Spain? It's the new Ferrari fella in place of Nigel Stepney, who with his broken ankle will be watching this race. He's done an immaculate job so far, and that's a good stop by Rubens Barrichello. 7.2 seconds, and behind him there is Ralf Schumacher.
That could put Barrichello in the lead of this motor race. I don't know, I haven't seen Schumacher and Coulthard come over the start-finish line. It's totally upside down at the moment, but I wonder if that put Barrichello out in front of the race.
I think you're right, Martin. It's so easy to get it wrong, though. I think we'd better be very, very cautious until we see things how things are settling down, if they settle down. Because, as I said, there's cars flying in and out of the pits as the weather conditions deteriorate. It's wet out there, but it's not lashing down with rain like it did last year. It could well stop and the circuit start to dry out. That is exactly what happened in the Formula 3000 race yesterday, which went all topsy-turvy when the rain came down. So lap 17 out of 67, 50 to go. We've had action enough already, and look, coming towards us, previous race leader Michael Schumacher, now on a new set of Bridgestone boots. Behind him is Mika Häkkinen. They exit the chicane again as Alexander Wurz in 16th position in the Benetton goes off circuit across the grass over the sawtooth rumble strip, which can be very damaging indeed.
Right, Barrichello must have had some kind of problem on that in-lap because he actually is some way behind. So now it is Schumacher, Coulthard, and then Häkkinen you can see in the distance, Murray.
In third third position. So it's Ferrari, McLaren, and Pedro de la Rosa coming towards us in fourth position. Wonderful. In the points, it's a long time since they've been there. Fisichella is fifth, Button is sixth. There's a lot more to come, but we are leaving for the moment. Difficult enough when you're normally fit, as is Michael Schumacher. Now, Schumacher is lapping at about 1 minute 32, 1 minute 33 at the present moment, which is a couple of seconds faster than David Coulthard, who is in second position, and only about half a second faster than Mika Häkkinen. So Mika Häkkinen is catching his teammate in second place, but he's still losing time and distance to the man who crosses the line now and goes into his 19th lap out of 67. Michael Schumacher in the background. You see David Coulthard. Now we wait to see Mika Häkkinen come towards us in the McLaren. There he is in the background. Third place. Pedro de la Rosa is driving a storm of a race, and everybody will be keeping their fingers crossed for arrows. They've been driving in Grand Prix for such a long time. There is De La Rosa. Behind him in fifth place in the blue car is Fisichella. Eddie Irvine is in the points for Jaguar. And that is Jos Verstappen behind him, and then Rubens Barrichello. Verstappen is seventh. Barrichello has paid dear. He is down in eighth position. Johnny Herbert is ninth, and so both the Jaguars are well in the top 10. Good news.
Jenson Button has gone off somewhere or stopped in the first sector, Murray. So Button, I believe, is out of this race. The out's gone off the computer now, but Button's had some kind of problem in the first sector.
Fisichella and De La Rosa fighting for position, and Fisichella takes it and moves up into fourth position. Lap 19 out of 67. What a motor race this is, as Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari leads David Coulthard by 7 seconds. But Mika Häkkinen in the second McLaren is catching Coulthard. A fantastic battle for fourth place between Pedro de la Rosa in the Arrows and Fisichella in the Benetton. And Eddie Irvine is in sixth position for Jaguar. In the points for Jaguar. Jos Verstappen, Arrows, seventh. Barrichello, Ferrari down in eighth position. Johnny Herbert, the second Jaguar, in the top 10. He is ninth, and 10th is Ralf Schumacher.
Yes, well, with whatever kind of problem Barrichello had on his in-lap, that's put him down in eighth, as you've seen. And just coming up now to pass Verstappen, and Verstappen may just cut across his bow there, and Barrichello realising that and giving him plenty of space. He's going to get better drive out of the corner, and now surely the next corner is Barrichello's to take seventh place. He's got more grip. No, Verstappen's not going to make it that easy for him. A nice piece of driving, Jos. So Barrichello's going to have to work to come through the field. The man who's taking it too easily, he's too cautious, is Coulthard in second place. Remember, Murray, he went off in this, leading this race easily last year by pushing too hard in the wet. Right now, I don't think he's pushing hard enough. He's losing a couple of seconds a lap to Michael Schumacher, and Häkkinen is catching him about a second and a half per lap.
This is fantastic motor racing. Sixth on the right, Eddie Irvine, Jaguar. Jos Verstappen, seventh. Rubens Barrichello in the Ferrari, eighth. Now they are fighting each other. I could hardly believe my ears after Spain when I heard people complaining about the two Schumacher brothers, Ralf in the Williams and Michael in the Ferrari, having a battle for position. It was great motor racing, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Absolutely on the limit, as David Coulthard is being caught, as Martin's told you, by Mika Häkkinen. James Allen, what's the news?
Sensational atmosphere down here in the pit lane today, Murray. Just looking at the pit stops, Coulthard stopped for 7.4 seconds. That's not a lot of fuel to go on board, but I think he had quite a bit to start. Now Schumacher stopped for 12 seconds. That's enough fuel for 35 laps, but he had very little fuel at the start, so they're roughly on the same sort of fuel load at the moment. Häkkinen's problem was getting the wheel nut back onto the right rear tyre. It's cost him dear, about 4 seconds. But on a day like today, with such strange and changeable conditions, it might not be the end of the world for him. But obviously, Ferrari and McLaren both think it's going to rain now for quite a long time, at least the next half an hour or 40 minutes. This race is far from over, and we definitely will have more pit stops.
And Häkkinen goes through, passes David Coulthard. Häkkinen's been lapping 2 seconds a lap faster than his teammate. He's got the bit between his teeth now. He's going for it. He's back into second position. David Coulthard there, the pole position man, goes down to third position. But Mika Häkkinen is some 12 seconds behind race leader Michael Schumacher on lap 21.
David Coulthard was looking down in the cockpit there at some point, but normally he's the man in the rain. He's normally absolutely flying. Remember Manicourt last year, where he just scampered off into the distance, and even here. And look, Coulthard, I think he knows that his teammate was much faster than him, gave him plenty of space to pass him going up into turn 7. So Coulthard may be carrying some kind of problem. Normally he is faster than that on a wet track.
Yeah, I remember that David Coulthard has actually got 3 broken ribs. He's recovering from them. He's a lot better than he was in Spain. But the fact is that he's got 3 broken ribs, and it's a tremendously demanding situation physically that it's in now, as the Ferrari of Michael Schumacher scythes its way through the field. He is now up behind Pedro Diniz, who is 18th. He's lapped Mazzacane. In fact, he's passed Pedro Diniz.
Yes, I think Coulthard lost 5 seconds on the last lap, Maris. I think his problem is more than a few spare ribs in there that are not doing their job. So Coulthard carrying some kind of drama in the car. James, what can you tell us about David?
Well, what I can tell you is that the last time by, David came quite close to the pit wall. Adrian Newey, the chief designer, came off the pit wall and looked down, leant out over the side to have a very close look. I think it was at the front wing of the McLaren to see if there was any damage. I saw him tap Dave Ryan there, who runs...
Oh! Sorry, James, that was Schumacher getting it sideways. Carry on.
I saw him... This is amazing, isn't it, Murray? I saw him tap Dave Ryan, who runs Coulthard's race effort, on the shoulder and say, it's OK, Coulthard's car is OK.
Well, it may be OK, but it's not quick enough to hold that second position. We're on lap 23 now. Now, this is going to be a replay of Rubens Barrichello coming up behind Pedro de la Rosa and Eddie Irvine to try and gain track position. I've said so far it's Verstappen, actually, I apologise. I said that Barrichello has been the disappointment of this race for me so far, because he is down in 7th position. Well, he's moved up a place there, and the race order is Schumacher leading Häkkinen. As you see, Barrichello diving through inside Verstappen's arrows. Now, the arrows are in 8th position and 5th position. De La Rosa is in the top 6. And the top 6 are Michael Schumacher, 12.7 seconds, Mika Häkkinen, 4.8 seconds, David Coulthard, 9.3 seconds, Fisichella 4th, 1.3 seconds, 6.5 seconds, Rubens Barrichello, and then Eddie Irvine is still there, and Johnny Herbert is still in the top 10 for Jaguar. Now, Johnny Herbert is fighting to maintain his place in the Jaguar team next year. He really wants a good result. Well, of course, he always wants one. And last year he got one here because he won the race in appalling conditions. Look at the track, look at the distance between Schumacher that you've seen go through, and here is Mika Häkkinen. Comparative lap times, well, Häkkinen is lapping nearly 2 seconds faster at the present moment than Schumacher.
This lap's about the same, though, and remember, Michael had to pass the car on the previous lap, and he got well out of shape, as we saw for ourselves. So I think at the end of this lap, we'll see Michael has done a 30.4, and Mika a 30.5, so the gap remains around 12.9 seconds.
Well, interestingly, in terms of the Constructors' contest, which Ferrari lead McLaren by 7 points, both the Ferrari and the McLaren teams are on 10 points. That's a replay of Michael Schumacher going into the chicane and nearly, but not, losing it. Michael Schumacher is on a potential 10 World Championship points, and that would increase his lead over Mika Häkkinen. We're going for a break.
Welcome back, AJ. I know we've been saying for a long time that Grand Prix have been getting a little bit processional as you look there after 24 laps. There are the top runners. But it's a circuit like this and conditions like this that you really see the best, don't you?
Well, you see the likes of Michael Schumacher's talent even come to the fore, even more so. His car control is fabulous. The way he got hold of that Ferrari and, you know, I mean, his car control is just second to none. But, of course, these sort of conditions are fabulous for guys that are in cars that aren't perhaps as competitive as the McLaren and the Ferrari, because it really... Oops, who's that now? That's going to be Zonta or... yeah, Zonta. It gives people a chance that aren't... whose cars aren't competitive as the McLaren or the Ferrari to show their driving skills. And, you know, like the likes of Fisichella and Villeneuve or Verstappen, you know, in these sort of conditions, they can really show their team owners, look, hey, this is my driving prowess. If I had a better car, I could be up with these guys anyway. So, in a lot of ways, these conditions are great for the guys that, as I said, whose car haven't got the cars that are competitive.
Enjoying it as we look at Schumacher and the Ferrari. Back to Murray.
Again, the back of the Ferrari steps out. Again, Michael Schumacher holds it. Lap 26, look at this replay of Michael Schumacher leading the race by 16 seconds, recovering from that half spin and keeping ahead of Mika Häkkinen second. David Coulthard is now 25 seconds behind the race leader and being caught by fourth place Fisichella. Fifth is Rubens Barrichello storming his way up from eighth in the second Ferrari. Pedro de la Rosa is sixth for Arrows in the points. Eddie Irvine is seventh for Jaguar. Jos Verstappen is eighth for Arrows, so both the Arrows are in the top eight. Johnny Herbert is now in 10th position because he's been caught and passed by Ralf Schumacher. Now Jenson Button is in 14th position. Retirements, only two so far, and sadly it's the two Jordans. Jarno Trulli went out right at the beginning, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen had a major engine blowout, and he went out very early indeed. So, Michael Schumacher, the reign master of Formula One, the man who's shown us time and time again what a genius he is in the wet, like the Spanish Grand Prix at Barcelona, like the Monaco Grand Prix, is now in a secure first position and lapping faster than the man you're looking at, the twice world champion Mika Häkkinen.
Yes, the McLarens are off the pace in the wet conditions, no doubt about it. The man to watch is Barrichello, who's scything his way back up the field, was eighth, is now fifth, catching Fisichella ahead of him at 1.3 seconds a lap, and the pair of them are catching David Coulthard, who is just 8 seconds behind Mika Häkkinen. So the two McLarens have got to find some kind of pace in these tricky conditions if they want to keep anything near to these podium positions at the end of the day.
Well, I've seen much, much worse conditions than this in the wet, and I'm not belittling the conditions now. But we're not getting those gigantic roosters. Well, we are as I talk now, and the Ferrari goes into some pretty deep water. But it's raining steadily. It is not lashing down. And Michael Schumacher, with a clear track in front of him now, is lapping at about 1:29.1, which is almost a full second faster than Mika Häkkinen. And this is where the fact that Michael Schumacher is the best of the day is very much underlined. And there is, you can see the Arrows being chased very hard indeed by Ralf Schumacher's Williams. That's Verstappen in 8th position. Ralf Schumacher in 9th position. Behind them is Johnny Herbert. Ahead of them is Eddie Irvine. And we're hearing news that that Schumacher may be coming in. Ralf Schumacher may be coming into the pits. This is the 28th lap.
This is what I was talking about having enough fuel on board to have a decent window, because there's nothing worse than having to come in to change your tyres and then several laps later, coming in again to put fuel in the car. It's a double negative, but often there's no way around it unless you run the car just ridiculously heavy at all conditions.
And now with Barrichello into 5th position and on a potential 2 World Championship points, Ferrari have got potentially more points for the Constructors' Championship here in Europe than McLaren have. Barrichello is doing a superb job, and so is Verstappen, because Verstappen in the orange arrows pursued by the white Williams of Ralf Schumacher, who tries to go through on the inside and has to run wide as Verstappen retains his line. They're both closing up on Eddie Irvine and the Jaguar, who's holding that 7th position. It's quite conceivable that here, for the first time in the year 2000, well, first time ever, we're going to see a Jaguar get a Formula 1 World Championship point. Fingers crossed.
The problem is for the driver in front, unless you're in a very slow corner where the spray just curiously just fades down and all of a sudden you can see what's going on around you and see something in your mirrors at any kind of speed over, let's say, 70, 80 miles an hour, you cannot see a thing behind you. So if a driver takes a stab at you unexpectedly, it's so easy for you just to drive in and take your normal line, especially in these conditions where you're really needing maximum concentration on the few meters of track ahead of you, rather than in the dry where you're looking down the road a little bit further.
Well, 16 seconds is the gap now between the man you're watching, Michael Schumacher. He has already won 3 Grand Prix this year. There is Mika Häkkinen, who's won 1. Schumacher, of course, did the hat-trick, got the treble, the first 3 races in Australia, Brazil, and the San Marino Grand Prix at Imola. Then David Coulthard won at Silverstone in those appalling weather conditions for the people who were trying to get there, although the track was dry. Remember that. This is the first wet race we've had this year. And then Mika Häkkinen won in Spain. So it's 3 to Ferrari, 2 to McLaren so far. And the World Championship well and truly alive, but not this race for Mika Salo, because he is out of it from 13th position. His teammate Pedro Diniz, 17th now, has been lapped.
Something yellow in the gravel trap there as well, but I don't think it's a piece of Salo. I think it must be a piece of somebody else.
I think it's his nose. Oh, I was going to say it's his nose cone, but it's staying. It's off something else.
Something else early in the race, but there's no way out of there in a Formula 1 car, that's for sure.
Mika Salo in a much improved Sauber this year, but their usual problem is that they start well and then start to deteriorate with a lack of development. But they've changed the management personnel and the technical personnel at Hinwil in Switzerland, and things were actually looking much better for Sauber, but not here at the moment, as David Coulthard in 3rd position is seeing, or will be seeing soon, Giancarlo Fisichella in Benetton, the man who was 2nd in Brazil, getting closer and closer to the McLaren. There's about half a second in it. That yellow car is Mazzacane, who has been lapped. And coming towards us now, there is Fisichella, and behind him Rubens Barrichello. Now Barrichello, I remind you, has come up from 8th to 7th, from 7th to 6th, from 6th to 5th, and that's where he is now, and he's having a go at Giancarlo Fisichella's Benetton to move up into 4th position and get himself another World Championship point if he can stay there. Rubens Barrichello, of course, is no slouch in the wet. Remember how well he did at Monaco as Eddie Irvine battles with Jos Verstappen's arrows, and off they go, and that's Irvine and Schumacher. Ralf Schumacher out of the race. Ralf Schumacher out of the race as he was hit. Now he's quite calmly going on, having lost the wing at the back of the Williams. The race, Ralf Schumacher go on and go back to the Williams pit, and Eddie Irvine is out of the race as a result of that coming together.
Yes, they both lost the rear wing, but it's not like going in for a new front wing, 18, 19 seconds and a few bolts. The rear wing is fixed much more rigidly and in a more complicated way to the car, and effectively, and this is how it all started, look, with Verstappen defending his line. Irvine having to get out of it. They just touch, look, Irvine spinning. Ralph almost really just an innocent bystander and just clips the rear wing as he spins around, and you can see then Johnny Herbert slicing through. So Ralph there, he probably should have seen this one coming a little bit more, but Eddie getting in deep. Verstappen, we've seen that this afternoon, he just simply will not yield to anybody, and Ralph spinning off in sympathy and losing his rear wing. And that contact, as we see later on, made the rear wing of the Jaguar of Irvine also fall off.
And it means that Johnny Herbert has moved up 2 places. He's only... Oh, and that is Jos Verstappen. No right front wheel.
That's a big crash he's had. When we see a replay of that, I suspect it's coming down to the VDOL. That may mean a safety car. And it could be into safety car scenario here.
It's going to be very tough for Michael Schumacher if that is the case, and I believe it will be, because they will have to drag that car off the circuit with one wheel missing as Verstappen runs in. It will mean that the hard-won 17-second lead that Michael Schumacher currently has over Hakkinen. Let's have a look and see what happens on the replay here as Eddie Irvine loses the rear wing-less Jaguar. No downforce, of course, so there would be no grip at the back. It just spins out and into the gravel trap.
Eddie would not have known his rear wing had gone missing as he went into that corner. He'd have been more surprised than anybody when that happened. We just got no signs of any safety car, so maybe they're happy to recover that car under waved yellows. And with marshals on the track, you get waved yellows, so the drivers know there are not just machines or slow machines around or damaged cars, there are actually people around too. But at the moment, they're covering it under the waved yellows.
And a waved blue flag is being given to Ricardo Zonta in the BAR in 12th position. And that means there's somebody faster coming up behind you who wants to lap you. Get out of the way. And that's ever likely to be well, it is now. Michael Schumacher is past Zonta. So here we are, lap 32, which is just about getting on for half distance. Michael Schumacher that you're looking at with no signs of the safety car coming out, to his immense relief, not that he'll know about it, is 18 seconds ahead of Hakkinen, who is 19 seconds ahead of Coulthard, who is 7 seconds ahead of Fisichella, who has got Barrichello right behind him in 5th place. De La Rosa in the arrows is still in the points at 6th. Johnny Herbert, Jaguar, is 7th, and remember, he won the race last year for Stewart. Jacques Villeneuve is 8th, Alesi is 9th, Button is in 10th position, Alexander Wurz is 11th, and Ricardo Zonta 12th has been lapped.
One of those days for Jenson Button to hang around, because he could get a point, even though he's had a difficult race. I think there was some kind of drama on one lap where he lost something around 1.5 minutes in the first section of one of the laps, but if he hangs around, he might still get a point or two this afternoon. You saw a rider on the back of a scooter while Murray was talking. I think that was a quick shot of Ralf Schumacher getting a lift back to the pit. He clearly decided, and Barrichello is through. Barrichello is past Fisichella, and now he will just home in on Coulthard, who's clearly nursing some kind of drama because he's 2 to 3 seconds off the pace of the leaders, and Barrichello will now just zoom into the back of Coulthard's McLaren.
And as I've said before, we can surmise that David Coulthard in 3rd place has got a problem. We don't know what it is. Ferrari will know, of course. McLaren will know, of course, because they will be in radio contact with. This is a replay as they come up to the chicane of Fisichella, seeing Barrichello dive up the inside of him. The Italian yields, and away they go. So that is the position, with Rubens Barrichello now up into 4th place on lap 33, half distance. Come back soon after the break. Up the inside of the Benetton at the chicane, going through, taking 4th position, and now is on 3 World Championship points, and he's catching, as Martin pointed out, and Barrichello into the pits. Are you there, James?
I am, Murray, no, I am here. I think this is probably more a fuel thing than anything else. They may be slightly unhappy about the tyres, but this is fuel to take him to the end of the race. This is Ross Brawn throwing the dice. Whatever happens now with the fuel situation and the race situation at the front, this is to get Barrichello up onto the podium.
Yeah, and he's not all that far from it, but now he's got to cope with the arrows of De La Rosa, who has moved ahead of him. But I presume De La Rosa will be stopping again. Johnny Herbert in the background is just outside the points in 7th position. The Nürburgring and this European Grand Prix certainly suit Romford-born Johnny Herbert, who won so brilliantly by calling the tyre changes right in foul weather conditions last year. So now we are with the sole Prost in the race, Jean Alesi, out of the pit lane, and Alesi was in 10th position. Well, now Jenson Button has moved up, and in the Williams he is in 9th position. Lap 35, Michael Schumacher is the leader, and here is the Ferrari pit crew waiting to get the Ferrari in. Here is Michael Schumacher, and here is Rubens Barrichello in the second Ferrari. Into his pit, off comes the wet tyres, on go another set. The fuel filler is doing his job to perfection after Nigel Stepney was hurt last week. And now here we are again as Michael Schumacher comes into the pit lane. Michael Schumacher into the pit lane for his second stop. Now he's 18 seconds ahead of Hakkinen, and James Allen is waiting for him.
Yeah, it's a good decision by Ross Brawn. It's absolutely chucking it down now. There's no chance of this track drying out before the end of the race. This is the fuel to take Schumacher through to the end of the race. Nice, calm, relaxed pit stop by the Ferrari team. I think they feel they've got the day one here. Nice, calm, relaxed pit stop by the Ferrari team. I think they feel they've got the day one here, but there is, of course, still some way to go in this motor race. Anything can happen.
And I can tell you that Mika Hakkinen has now gone through into the lead. There he is, you see. There is the McLaren of Mika Hakkinen. Now look at the pit lane and wait for Michael Schumacher coming out at a steady 80 kilometres an hour, which is what he has to do as we wait to see whether David Coulthard comes through. No, that was Ricardo Zonta in the background in the VAR, and he is well down in 12th position.
That's Coulthard too far behind. What I'm finding slightly curious is that Rubens Barrichello only stopped for 7 seconds, and there's a half distance to go. Now you use significantly less fuel in the wet, maybe up to 7 or 8% less, but even so, I'm still surprised that Barrichello wasn't stationary longer. And Louise is in the pits with Eddie Irvine. But not quite yet.
Well, let's have a look and see what's happening with Mika Hakkinen in the McLaren. He's not as good in the wet as Michael Schumacher is, which is not to say that he is not good. But it's Michael Schumacher all the way at the present moment, looking good. But if I say that, he will hit a problem. He's easing away from Ricardo Zonta, who he has already passed, as we go back now to David Coulthard in 3rd position. But he's about 40 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, or was before the German came in for his second pit stop. So Schumacher has stopped twice. He's the only one of the top men who has stopped twice, apart from Rubens Barrichello. So both the Ferraris have stopped and are going through to the end of the race without a further planned stop.
Strange as it may seem, your biggest enemy on an afternoon like this is not the drivers in the other cars. It's those white painted lines that delineate either side of the racetrack. Put a wheel on those as you go into or leave a corner, and you'll be facing the wrong way sooner than you dare imagine.
Well, now it's up to Michael Schumacher to really go for it, because Hakkinen is leading the race by about 20 seconds as a result of the fact that Schumacher has stopped a second time and that Hakkinen, has not. We don't know what the respective fuel loads at the start of the race were for Schumacher's Ferrari and Hakkinen's McLaren. All that matter for David Coulthard's McLaren that we're looking at now. But Fisichella is in 4th position, behind David Coulthard in your picture at the present moment. Pedro de la Rosa is 5th. Rubens Barrichello, as a result of his stop, is down to 6th position, but is again catching the arrows very rapidly indeed. Johnny Herbert hovering just outside the points in the Jaguar. It would be poetic justice if Herbert is the first man to score a World Championship point for Jaguar, as he was the first, indeed the only man, to score a World Championship win for the Stewart team, which has metamorphosised itself into Jaguar. Jacques Villeneuve is 8th. Jenson Button is now in the top 10 at 9th position. Alexander Wurz is in 10th position. There are 15 drivers still left out of the 21 who started, because remember, Nick Heidfeld, the German in his home country, driving for Prost, was not able to start because his car was found to be 2 kilos underweight at the end of qualifying, an absolutely unintentional mistake. And we're now on lap 38. Now, David Coulthard is lapping marginally quicker at the present moment than Mika Häkkinen, his teammate, but Häkkinen is some 10 seconds ahead.
I don't know what's happening with Michael Schumacher. He didn't pass the car on the last lap. He's still got Zonta behind him. That's the resultant damage of Verstappen's accident. We still haven't seen a replay as to how he managed to bin his car quite in that fashion. But as you say, Coulthard actually faster than Schumacher too at the moment. So since Michael changed to this set of tyres, he hasn't really had a blistering pace yet.
No, it's strange, but when you change tyres, it can dramatically affect your performance. As I've said before, tyres are now the only handmade thing in the sense that humans construct them on a motor car, and they are laboriously built up ply by an operative, and as a result of that you can get marginal differences from one set of tyres to another, and marginal differences in the tyre can make more than marginal differences to the performance of the car on the track.
Yes, and of course we know Michael took on 11.8 seconds worth of fuel to see him to the end of the race, but nonetheless it's not enough to justify this kind of lap time difference, although of course the extra mass in the car to turn it, accelerate it and slow it down in the wet conditions, it does have a more dramatic effect than in dry conditions, but sometimes, strangely enough, it can also settle the car down and make it handle and go better.
Well, the conventional wisdom is that you need about 20-25 seconds lead to get into your garage, having slowed down, take on a new set of tyres and wheels and get out again, still in the lead. And that's about what Mika Häkkinen has got now. Have McLaren got some fiendish master plan up their sleeves, which is going to enable Mika Häkkinen to win 2 races in succession? But the twice world champion last year and the year before, he's 25 seconds ahead on the previous lap. He's coming up to complete his 39th lap now, enter his 40th lap. And I remind you, 25 seconds to the nearest 1/10 was the lead he had over Michael Schumacher. Is that increasing or not as he closes up on Alexander Wurz in 10th position to lap the Benetton? So Häkkinen leads, Schumacher second, Coulthard third, Fisichella in the Benetton catching David Coulthard just as Mika Häkkinen is catching his teammate, Fisichella's teammate, Wurz, and Michael Schumacher has still, there he goes, over the line now, and the gap has increased. Mika Häkkinen is pulling away on his lighter fuel load from Michael Schumacher at about 1.5 seconds a lap. And he's got very nearly now the window that he needs to get in, change tyres and wheels and get out still in the lead. That's the Williams pit crew all ready to receive either Jenson Button or just checking whether, no, Ralf Schumacher is out of the race as a result of that coming together with Eddie Irvine. In fact, here are the retirements in the order of retirement as you watch 4th place Fisichella at his pit stop. Jarno Trulli and Heinz-Harald Frentzen both out very early. Now the arrows goes through of Pedro de la Rosa to take 4th position. Salo is out, Schumacher Ralf is out, Verstappen is out, Eddie Irvine is out. There is Fisichella joining the pits. Pedro de la Rosa has gone through. There he is in 4th position. So a terrific drive. by Pedro de la Rosa, and everybody in Arrows will be keeping their fingers crossed because they have yet to score a World Championship point this year.
Well, to give Mika Häkkinen track position when he makes his necessary one more stop, I think he needs over half a minute. So you see the end of Jenson Button's second stop of the afternoon, and again full to the end of the race, of course. But I think Mika Häkkinen, whoops, Jenson, calm down a bit. I think Mika Häkkinen needs well over half a minute to make sure he's got track position on Michael Schumacher. And Michael Schumacher's just pegged the gap back a little bit. Hope Jenson's seen him coming, and he has.
Yeah, and you probably noticed that as Jenson Button exited the pit lane, the fuel filler flap was still up. That is because the new electronic regulations require the fuel flap to be up and the tail light to be flashing until second gear has been engaged.
Yes, and Mika Häkkinen is being held up, the race leader. Now he's let him through. That has cost Häkkinen quite a lot of very crucial time at this part of the race, where, as I said, he needs a window to make his pit stop and get out ahead of Michael Schumacher. He's had two very, very poor laps following Fisichella.
Yeah, it's lost him at least a couple of seconds. The lead of Mika Häkkinen that you're looking at has come down from 27 seconds to about 25 seconds. It's going to be a very close run thing. Lap 41, 67 lap race. Häkkinen leads Schumacher. Coulthard is still third, being caught by De La Rosa, but only at the rate of about a tenth of a second a lap. Barrichello is still fifth, but he's right behind De La Rosa and will, I soon predict, be up into fourth place again. This is Wurz coming in from top 10, and Louise Good. So there is Alexander Wurz, ninth position when he came in. Jenson Button, I think may well get that ninth position back. He was ahead of Wurz before he came into the pits. And Johnny Herbert in seventh position, in eighth position, because Villeneuve's got ahead of him, is about to be lapped by the Flying Finn, as he calls himself, Mika Häkkinen. And news from Louise Goodman, who's with Eddie Irvine.
Yes, I am now. Thankfully, this rain getting into my electrics as well as everything else. Eddie, Tussle back there, were you aware that the fact that he'd left your rear wing?
It looked, everything looked okay, but obviously it wasn't. And then it obviously went down the next straight. So I'm surprised, because normally you would notice the rear being very, very light, which it wasn't, so strange.
Running strongly until then, though the team seemed to pull up their performance this weekend.
Yeah, we haven't been bad. You know, this sort of circuit suits a car that's a bit light on the rear end, and the qualifying went reasonably well, and I think the race was going reasonably well. The wet, we definitely... We had a car on dry settings, which wasn't exactly ideal, but it was hard work. It was really hard work. The rear end kept going all the time, so I was really working hard to stay where I was.
Cheers, Eddie.
Johnny Herbert, Eddie Irvine's teammate, coming into the pits from eighth position for his second stop of the day.
Consistent rain now, Murray, really. Not heavy rain. I don't expect a lot of standing water or aquaplaning, especially online. I think if they move offline, you see a little bit more of that, but it tracked the drains reasonably well. So it's just a question of staying in those wheel tracks. The cars, they lose about 5-6 miles an hour down the straights, as we see a Lacey coming up the inside of Wurz, and that is actually for position, called 10th position. They're a lap down between them. But lifting all that water up into the air, the tyres are lifting bucket loads of water into the sky effectively, and that takes a lot of energy, a lot of power, and you lose quite a lot of straight line speed because of that.
Now Häkkinen's got his work cut out, because he's coming up to Jacques Villeneuve, who is seventh, who is trying to get past Fisichella's blue Benetton in sixth position. And Villeneuve will be concentrating on getting past Fisichella, not on letting Mika Häkkinen through. Now, there's very little difference between their lap times, but every tenth of a second that Mika Häkkinen loses to Michael Schumacher, who's 25 seconds behind him now, is going to be absolutely critical when the Finn comes in for his second, we presume, and last pit stop. Because I can't believe he is not going through. We're on lap 43 now out of 67. So, Fisichella there, sixth position. Villeneuve, seventh. Mika Häkkinen leading the race, but he's got to get past these two, because he's being held up. Doesn't look much, but he is being held up as Villeneuve goes for Fisichella and throws up an enormous amount of spray in Mika Häkkinen's face. obscuring the Finns' visibility. Now, it's 25 seconds between Häkkinen and Villeneuve, or was when this lap started. I predict it's going to be a lot less than that at the end of this lap, because Schumacher is lapping in about 1 minute 30.9. Villeneuve is lapping in 1 minute 33.8.
Yes, McLaren's decision to start the cars fat with fuel looks very smart at the moment, but this is the stage of the race where Häkkinen needs to be capitalising on that, while the Ferraris effectively right now have a higher fuel load as the McLaren one is running down, and he's gone for the inside. Villeneuve's seen him, an ex-world champion himself, of course, Villeneuve, and smart enough to know what's going on around him. Coulthard massively off the pace. I don't know how he's keeping third place. I think McLaren should get him in the pit, maybe change his tyre pressures or something, give him a bit more pressure if he's aquaplaning or whatever, if he is struggling on any standing water. Although there doesn't, as I said, there doesn't appear to be much to me, but Coulthard struggling for lap time. He really should come in and have another set of tyres.
And I was so wrong about Pedro de la Rosa replay of Häkkinen lapping Villeneuve. Now, I was so wrong about De La Rosa and Barrichello. I said Barrichello would rapidly regain the fourth place he had got by passing De La Rosa after the pit stops. He's not done so. De La Rosa from Spain in the Arrows is holding fourth position. And then he's not only that, but he's catching David Coulthard at the rate of about 1.5 seconds a lap. He's 27 seconds behind him at the present moment, and Rubens Barrichello is not closing the gap as Häkkinen goes through and passes and laps Fisichella. So Häkkinen, there's only 5 people on the same lap now, and that is lap 45. Häkkinen, Schumacher, and the gap is down to 22 seconds. It's bad news for Mika Häkkinen. The gap is down for 22 seconds. And so, as a result of being held up, Häkkinen has lost nearly 3 seconds. Coulthard is third, De La Rosa is fourth, Barrichello is in 5th position, and those are the only 5 on this lap.
Yes, he's lost 3 seconds, but that's like a net 6 or 7, because I think at this stage of the race, you would expect him, he was, until he caught that traffic, pulling away. Now, that's clearly the McLaren mechanics in the pit lane. I'd be surprised if they're going to bring Mika in unless he just has to have fuel. Otherwise, they'd let him use that clear air. Does he come in the pit lane? Yes, he does. It is for Mika Häkkinen. So, unfortunately for him, he clears the traffic just as he has to come in for fuel. He's clearly got not enough fuel to go any further. So, James is waiting for him.
Colossal frustration down here in the McLaren garage. They really are upset. That traffic has really messed up their race effort. But to be honest, he was going to need about 40 seconds anyway to get it back out ahead. Looking at what happened with Michael when he made his stop and how much time Häkkinen made up on him. So it's not a bad stop so far. That's the fuel to the end of the race. Slow getaway, trying to find his gear.
Schumacher through, James. I'm sorry. Schumacher has passed Mika Häkkinen into the pit lane. Here is Michael Schumacher regaining the lead. There on the left is Mika Häkkinen back again into 2nd position. So that held-up period really did cost Mika Häkkinen a lot of time.
Well, it's a new adventure now for Häkkinen. How do these tyres feel now? A little bit of extra fuel, but we know both cars must have identical fuel levels, give or take a kilo or 2, to get to the end of the motor race, as Coulthard comes in too from a distant 3rd place. So Coulthard in for his 2nd stop, and I expect now Michael Schumacher to pull away another second or 2 in these first 2 laps before then we see which one of them, if Häkkinen can close that gap down. A decent stop there from Coulthard. That was critical. Can he get back out ahead of De La Rosa and Barrichello?
Well, here's De La Rosa and Barrichello. Here they come on the right. There is David Coulthard on the left, and De La Rosa goes through, and Barrichello goes through. So David Coulthard has lost 2 places. He's gone down from 3rd to 5th. And the magnificent Pedro de la Rosa in the orange arrows, here he is coming towards us, is up into a podium position. Well, he's got a World Championship point in the past. Last year he got one, but the possibility of him finishing on the podium in 3rd position is a really exciting one, something that Formula One really needs.
Yes, we didn't see De La Rosa stop, to my knowledge, and I don't know how long or exactly when he stopped in this race. So he is the only one of the front runners that's had 1 pit stop, which is entirely feasible, but we'll try and look into which lap De La Rosa stopped on.
Yeah, I was expecting when this race began, you're looking at Barrichello now Ferraris in 4th position. I was expecting when this race began for most of them to stop once. In fact, it's just the opposite. They've stopped twice.
Yes, once for fuel and once for tyres, really, but we think De La Rosa stopped about lap 15, so I'm reasonably certain he will have to stop again. And there's Coulthard now down to 5th place, and the slow lap times in the middle section of the race has cost him a podium place for sure.
Well, David Coulthard could regain 1 place if Pedro De La Rosa comes in, which seems unlikely. I don't see that David Coulthard could gain 2 places and finish on the podium. It's looking more and more as though it's going to be a Ferrari victory with a Ferrari 3rd place. Michael Schumacher winning the race, Rubens Barrichello being in 3rd place, sandwiching Mika Häkkinen, which would help enormously Michael Schumacher's lead over Häkkinen in the Drivers' Championship and Ferrari's lead over McLaren in the Constructors' Championship. But there are still 20 laps to go. The leaders are on their 47th lap now as the Ferrari goes through. So we've got a bit of a lull in this terrific race. So leave us and rejoin us later.
Welcome back. Well, just a few seconds ago we saw Villeneuve walking into the garage. Bad luck for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what went wrong there. Well, no doubt we'll find out soon enough, but the car looked all right. It was obviously a mechanical problem.
De La Rosa, that's a classic example of what you said at the top of the show, when in conditions like this a driver can show what he's worth.
Hey, you know, with a little bit of luck, De La Rosa could end up on the rostrum, and he certainly, with all due respect, wouldn't have been there under dry conditions. So, you know, it is a great opportunity for a good driver to show his mettle.
McLaren really having no luck with the traffic.
No, I mean, Häkkinen lost valuable seconds in that traffic there. He's been very bad with the traffic. It's just the way it goes. I mean, Schumacher's had a fairly good run with it, and Häkkinen's copped it all.
Back to Murray.
Prophesied was going to be ahead of De La Rosa a long time ago. He's not. But he means to be on that 3rd step of the podium just as much as De La Rosa means to be there himself. Great prospects of a terrific scrap. Now the Ferrari soon have the edge on the Arrows in terms of sheer engine power. Just look what Barrichello is having to cope with. A curtain of spray in front of him.
I think we're going to see the Arrows in the pits. The Arrows mechanics are out in the pit lane, I can see, and that surely means it can only be for De La Rosa as Verstappen has long departed this race.
Well, De La Rosa can be mighty proud of himself because he's held Barrichello off. Lap 49, Pedro De La Rosa, having driven magnificently in 3rd position, comes in for his 2nd pit stop. Barrichello is up into 3rd. Ferrari's 1st and 3rd, sandwiching Mika Häkkinen. News from Louise Goodman.
Yeah, down in the Arrows garage, I can tell you they're loving it. So well they would. De La Rosa running a very strong 4th. When you bear in mind that his car is fully set up for the dry condition, it really puts into perspective the guy's doing a great job. They've been constantly monitoring the weather. It carry on raining right till the end of the race, but he's in 5 off the through the end of the race, and hopefully he's going to keep that 4th position.
He was half asleep on his pit stop, though. I think it threw him. They did not change his tyres, which is a smart move. They just went to fuel him as he gets lapped by race leader Michael Schumacher, and De La Rosa very dozy in getting away.
I think he probably couldn't.
He probably couldn't understand why his car wasn't up in the air. The team quite smartly thought the tyres are not going to wear out. Just leave them on, go for a quick splash and go. And De La Rosa's slow away, but we now know he's got enough fuel, of course, to the end of the race. As you're watching Marc Gené in the Minardi.
From 13th position, retiring from the European Grand Prix. Lap 50, 17 to go. Michael Schumacher leads Mika Häkkinen that you're looking at by 13 seconds. Rubens Barrichello in the 2nd Ferrari back to 3rd position, 60 seconds behind his teammate who is leading. Up into 4th position comes David Coulthard. To 5th position comes Fisichella. De La Rosa, I'm not sure whether he is down to 7th letting Johnny Herbert up into 6th, or whether the Arrows is still in the points for 6th position. We'll know very shortly. But behind them, Jenson Button is in 8th position, ahead of Alexander Wurz and Ricardo Zonta. Everybody up to 6th position has been lapped, and there are now 17 laps to go.
Yes, the German producer's not showing it to us at the moment, but Jenson Button is all over the back of Johnny Herbert like a bad suit, and this being Jenson's first wet race, of course. So he stayed on the black step so far, has Jenson, and a good scrap going on with Johnny Herbert. And there's a 10-second stop-and-go penalty for Jean Alesi, some incident that we certainly haven't seen. So Alesi with a 10-second stop-and-go, and he is currently 12th.
Well, this is 7th to 10th. Just look at it. Johnny Herbert, Jenson Button, Alexander Wurz, Ricardo Zonta, in respectively the Jaguar, the Williams, the Benetton and the BAR. Johnny Herbert holding them up a bit. You've heard from Martin how valiantly Jenson Button is trying to get ahead of his countryman Johnny Herbert, but Johnny is looking for a World Championship point, and he possibly needs one more than anybody else in this race, because as I said earlier on, there has been talk about his position in the Jaguar team next year being under threat. If he can get a point here, as he won the race for Stewart last year, it would help him enormously. Now Zonta comes in, he's peeled off from the back, he's coming for his 2nd pit stop in the BAR, and of course that's reduced the battle that was ahead of him to 3 men, Johnny Herbert and Button and Wurz.
Well, that was pretty gormless as well. He just wandered into his pit. He's not in the centre of it at all. Ran into his jack man, into the jack itself. I mean, just wake up.
Well, you can see how the cars are slipping and sliding in these conditions. Just imagine being in the car, an enormous noise going on behind you. You're fighting for grip. There's 800 horsepower being pumped out. Just the merest whiff of too much throttle and you can be off the circuit. And we're seeing again, as we have seen so many times in the past, how superlatively good Michael Schumacher is in the wet. Now, that's the Ferrari pit crew coming out.
Now, I wonder if they short-filled Barrichello's car, because 7 seconds, in my view, was not enough. And what is that going on? That's Denitz taking Zonta, who's just made a pit stop for 10th place. But I'm wondering why Ferrari can really, I think, we know Michael took 11.8 seconds of fuel. I think yes, it's Barrichello, look, coming in. I was right about that. I just didn't think they put enough fuel in his car. And this plays back into Coulthard's hands, but he doesn't appear to have any speed to do anything about it.
Well, I'm just watching the road as you're watching Barrichello coming into the pit lane to see whether David Coulthard comes through and retakes that 3rd position. He was 19 seconds behind the Ferrari. It's going to be mighty close, but there's only just a little fuel gone in, and Barrichello exits the pit, and Coulthard has yet to go through. There he is! Watch it, watch the exit. Barrichello is going to come out, and I think David Coulthard is going to get ahead of him, and he's done so. There he is, David Coulthard, 3rd position. So it is Ferrari leading Schumacher, McLaren 2nd, Häkkinen, McLaren 3rd, Coulthard, Ferrari 4th, Barrichello. Fisichella is 5th, and Pedro de la Rosa is still 6th ahead of Johnny Herbert.
I think Barrichello will be asking some serious questions at the end of this race to understand what on earth they were doing. Why didn't they put a dozen seconds of fuel in his car like they did Michael Schumacher at the same point of the race? Very bizarre. Maybe they had a refueling rig problem or something, but clearly they just didn't get enough fuel in that car at that crucial stop.
You are right, but it is very strange because, as we've said many, many times, Ross Brawn is the master tactician in Formula One. Seems strange that he would get it wrong, but maybe there's more to it than meets the eye. Anyway, we're on lap 53 now, and Barrichello knows he's got to really get the hammer down. The gap between himself and David Coulthard, I would estimate at about 10 seconds. I won't know until the end of this lap, but it must be something like that. And he's got ahead of him Fisichella.
That's Michael Murray, sorry to butt in, but that's Michael coming up to lap Fisichella. So Barrichello is, I think, some way down the road from Fisichella, but he's now got a job on to catch Coulthard. Barrichello, I think, has got the faster pace in the wet without anyone. In fact, no thinking about it, he has. Can he he gets back at Coulthard in the remaining laps of this race. And has Coulthard got any kind of margin left in his pocket, whatever problem he's carrying, he's got to find some more speed from somewhere.
Well, Michael's lapping about 2 seconds faster than Fisichella. We'll see hopefully how he copes with it, and we see David Coulthard now looking good for that third position, which would give McLaren 10 World Championship points in the Constructors' Championship if he stays where he is.
So that's Coulthard's board then. Look, P3, 14 laps to go, plus 8.4, and they've read that off the same computer that we give you the information from as they've checked it out at the first sector on the lap that they're on. So it's the earliest piece of information you're going to get, and they're already getting that on the board for, and this is Hakkinen now, coming up to a lap Della Rosa.
Yeah, who is in 6th position, and off goes Zonta, the other BAR, down there in the gravel strip, and he's beached it. The rear wheel's spinning, they're off the gravel, so he won't get any purchase. I hope the safety car will not come out because he's judged to be in an unsafe position, but it's going to be mighty difficult to remove him unless they've got a crane truck that can lift him off, because they can't tow him out backwards. They certainly can't tow him out forwards because they would be on the tarmac. Here's a replay of what happened to Ricardo Zonta.
He would have snatched the front brake on the way in, run wide, and tried to power his way back onto the racetrack and beached it on the curve. Again, look, very, very tricky position. The drivers must respect the double-waved yellows. They must slow down, but they don't always, especially in the closing stages of a Grand Prix. How much do you slow down? How much is a little bit slower? That's the problem. And it's so easy for another car to snatch a brake and go in there, and that must be Fisichella's Wurz taking a shortcut that won't pay off. And
trying to catch Jensen, trying to get past Jensen Button and failing to do so. Now, a word about Button. We know that he's under pressure, just as Johnny Herbert is, because Frank Williams, to a lot of people's surprise, doesn't seem to be as enthusiastic about Button as we thought he might be. But Jensen, again, is in a first. It's his first wet Formula 1 race. And although he started well, Hakkinen, hand out, what's that mean?
That's Mika's very clever way of saying, look, I really am slowing down. I'm extra slowing down. Look, I've even only got one hand on the steering wheel. Quite a smart move there from Mika. He has respected the flags. He does, like all the drivers, he does respect the job that the marshals do. They risk their lives for our safety, but he's making sure that the FIA, that the people who control the race see it without question.
Yeah, good thinking, and he was doing it, of course, because he had seen Zonta's car in the gravel. As we watch the Ferrari of Rubens Barrichello, now we'll see whether he's catching David Coulthard. The gap was 8.5 seconds between Barrichello in 4th position and Coulthard in 3rd. But he is catching him, but not quickly. 8.3 seconds as we leave the Nürburgring.
That's just a quick replay there of Hakkinen just demonstrating to... He's not really talking to the marshals on the corner, he's talking to the stewards of the race who are watching this on TV. Now we'll go to the break, back very shortly.
Place David Coulthard in 3rd, but not quickly enough, I think, to be able to get onto the podium. 5th is Fisichella, who's been lapped. 6th is Della Rosa, who has been lapped, of course. Johnny Herbert is a long way behind Della Rosa. It does not look as though he's going to bring the Jaguar home in the points.
Well, I think you're being vindicated here, Mary. You're saying Barrichello hasn't really been shining. He's about to be lapped by his teammate. Now, at the sharp end of the grid, that does not happen. Remembering, of course, that Barrichello's fuel stop strategy definitely did not help him today. I don't know whose decision that was, but it was not a smart one. And Barrichello surely is fast enough to catch Coulthard.
Well, we'll have to wait and see. Meantime, the stirring side for a lot of people of 2 Ferraris together, and it is a stirring side, but it's not stirring for Rubens Barrichello for the simple reason, as Martin's just pointed out, that there is nearly 2.8 miles between them in terms of race distance, because Michael Schumacher there is on his 57th lap and Rubens Barrichello is on his 56th lap, shortly coming through to complete it. 11 laps to go, as you have just seen, and running last at the present moment is Jean Alesi, who has been lapped twice. Here are the retirements. Ricardo Zonta was the last one. Marc Genet, Jacques Villeneuve, Eddie Irvine, Verstappen, Ralf Schumacher, Mika Salo, Heinz-Harald Frentzen and Jarno Trulli. Their fourth win of the year, and even more interestingly from their point of view, are they going to have third place as well? It looks as though the former is yes, it looks as though the latter is no. Michael Schumacher leads Häkkinen by a decreasing margin of 7.6 seconds, with David Coulthard being caught by Barrichello, but not fast enough. Fisichella is fifth and De La Rosa is sixth.
I had to disagree with you, Murray, but I think Barrichello is plenty fast enough to catch David Coulthard at the moment. But amazingly, Barrichello is about to be lapped by his teammate, and at this level of the game, that is the ultimate embarrassment, even though clearly whoever decided Barrichello's strategy, it's definitely not helped him on the afternoon with that extra pit stop. But Barrichello about to be lapped by teammate Michael Schumacher, and that gives you a pretty good indication of just how well Schumacher and Häkkinen have been going this afternoon in these treacherous conditions, because they're lapping for the fourth place man.
You may be surprised to have seen Pedro Diniz move over and let Wurz through when they're running next to each other in position, but it's Fisichella going through now. He's in fifth position, and now Häkkinen goes through and laps again the Sauber of Pedro Diniz. So Giancarlo Fisichella has been lapped. Here is Mika Häkkinen storming up behind him on the 58th lap out of 67.
This has been a terrible lap for Mika Häkkinen. He's lost over 2 seconds passing the Sauber on this lap to Michael Schumacher, and this is why, look, you have to hover. You can't just drill it in there just in case he turns in on you. You've got to be more positive if you're letting somebody through and give them more than a car and a half to go at. And Michael has now lapped Barrichello. That's not going to help Barrichello's cause much, unless Michael can also lap Coulthard and hold him up in some way, which is he's more than capable of doing and understanding. But he's only 10 seconds ahead of Mika Häkkinen, so he hasn't got that much of a comfort zone.
I remember once when Michael Schumacher actually backed off as he was winning a race to help his brother, who was then driving for the Jordan team. No question of that, of course, at this race, when Mika Häkkinen is treading so comparatively closely on his heels, watched by Ron Dennis on the McLaren pit lane position.
This happened to me in Hungary when I was driving for McLaren. I was running third, and I let Michael ease past me, trying to hide my problems, but he spotted that I'd got a problem, backed off. He made me unlap myself, and then his teammate overtook my stricken car on the very last lap and booted me off the podium. That was Verstappen, as it happens, when they were both at Benetton. So Michael is very good at thinking about what's going on around him.
Yeah, people think that you just jump in the racing car and go absolutely flat out. You're probably at about 90% of your potential, and you're thinking all the time, and the actual racing actions are, if not automatic, getting that way when you're at the level that people like Schumacher, Ralf and Michael and Mika Häkkinen are at. So we're into the 60s now, lap 60 out of 67, and if this race concludes the way it is now, and Barrichello is continuing, as Martin's rightly pointed out, to close up on David Coulthard. Not terribly quickly, but he is getting closer all the time. It's going to be Ferrari's first and fourth, but it might be Ferrari first and third.
Yes, Barrichello curiously lost a lot of time on the last lap being lapped by his teammates. That didn't help his cause very much, and definitely played into David Coulthard's hands. But Barrichello still has got the speed, but he's going to be somewhat deflated seeing another Scarlet car whiz past him.
So let's assume that Michael Schumacher wins at this race. He's... Whoa!
It's the white line I was telling you about.
He might do it if there's much more of that and it gets worse. But let's assume he wins it, Martin. Is it going to be Michael Schumacher's skill, the Ferrari's performance, or the Ferrari team's strategy?
I think it's a combination of everything, but I think Michael has been pretty supreme this afternoon. The strategies have been different, but I don't think there's been much of an advantage. They both pitted roughly the same time for wets and refueling, etc., etc. So you have to say, on the afternoon, Michael has made a better fist of it. I think right from the beginning, as soon as it started to split the rain, it was clear to see the Ferrari was better suited to the tricky conditions.
Well, it's going to be mighty close for third position because Barrichello has nipped another second out of David Coulthard's lead over him. David Coulthard is third, and Barrichello's got the gap down now to 6 seconds with 6 laps to go, including the one they're on.
Yes, now this is very, very interesting because to get to Michael Schumacher, Häkkinen has got to lap Schumacher's teammate, and to keep, I mean, Häkkinen's really homing in on Schumacher at the moment. To keep Häkkinen away, he's got to leapfrog Häkkinen's teammate to lap him. So Coulthard might come into play in this race yet, and also Barrichello can do a pretty good job of spoiling Mika Häkkinen's race. Either which way, I think it could play into Coulthard's hands, and we could see a little bit of argy-bargy with people unintentionally, in inverted commas, holding other people up.
What we don't know, of course, is to what extent, if any, Michael Schumacher has got something in reserve. He knows that Häkkinen's closing up on him. He's in touch with his team by radio. He'll be getting pit boards.
What he's now got in reserve is Rubens Barrichello as rear gunner. So Ferrari may have pulled Barrichello into that position, and Michael Schumacher may not even have to risk passing David Coulthard.
So, lap 61, the race order: Schumacher, Häkkinen, Coulthard. The remaining 3 in the points: Rubens Barrichello, who's now 5.3 seconds behind Coulthard. Fisichella in the Benetton, looking good for another points finish. Pedro de la Rosa keeping his fingers crossed for the first point for Arrows of this season. Johnny Herbert is 7th, and there he is, followed by Jenson Button's Williams 8th, and Alexander Wurtz's Benetton 9th.
And David Coulthard's about to catch this little gaggle having a squabble. So Coulthard now, who's still really under pressure, he's got Schumacher homing up behind him to lap him. Barrichello just behind that, now just 5.3 seconds adrift. How David Coulthard is in third position this afternoon, I'll never know, with the whatever his problems are, whatever the reason, his lack of pace. But he's going to have to work hard to defend that. Look, Coulthard now has Michael Schumacher, the race leader, behind him.
So, lap 62, and if anybody in the first 6 goes out of this race, the car that you're looking at in the lead here, 7th place Johnny Herbert is, and here is the Ferrari.
Coulthard yields. Coulthard had to yield, so blue flags are waving. Wave blue flags for car 2, it says on the computer. So he'd obviously passed at least 4 of them, and he had to yield, otherwise he'll be given a stop-go penalty.
So, through to complete the lap goes Michael Schumacher. He's into his 63rd lap now as the Johnny Herbert Jaguar. Button, Williams, Wurtz, Benetton battle continues, being caught by Michael Schumacher to lap him.
Yes, this is Coulthard yielding. He has to do that to let the race leader through. He has been lapped. Now Barrichello just 2.3 seconds behind third place man Coulthard. Häkkinen just 5.9 behind race leader Michael Schumacher, but we know he's got to clear his own teammate and Michael's teammate to get to him.
And Michael Schumacher passes Wurtz's Benetton, so he's passing these people which Häkkinen behind him has then got to pass. So, lap 63, just 4 laps to go at the end of this one. Michael Schumacher keeping it on the field, on the tarmac, in spite of these appalling mist clouds in front of him, and Jenson Button now. Is he going to turn across? Yes, he does. Michael Schumacher backs off very sensibly, and Button sees them, holds the Ferrari back. This is a look at Häkkinen. So, and Coulthard in the McLaren, it's mighty close. and there's only 4 laps to go, and there is just 2 people on the same lap at the present moment. Michael Schumacher and his Finnish rival Mika Häkkinen in second place.
And Jenson Button lost out badly there. He's lost a place to Vert, so he goes down into 9th. But look at Barrichello trying to get up the inside of Coulthard. They're both being held up by the scrap that's going on. A further lap. They're lapping. They're already a lap down themselves. The other people getting in the way are 2 laps down, but Coulthard got a reasonable run out of the corner. Where is Barrichello in that spray? Still behind him, look.
Yeah, remember Spain. Remember the way that Rubens Barrichello nipped past the Schumacher brothers, but then he had Michael helping him by holding Ralph out, and there the Ferrari flying past. That's Michael Schumacher in the lead, flying past Johnny Herbert to lap the Jaguar in 7th position. So, keep this order in your mind. Schumacher leading, Häkkinen second, Coulthard third, Rubens Barrichello right behind him. Fisichella is 5th, Herbert is 7th, and they're virtually together on the track itself.
Even the camera can't see hardly now, look, so the visors do get penetrated with water. You start peering through little holes in the end, trying to just pick out the curbs and braking for Michael, but dangerously close to the edge of the track again.
But the vital thing is that Michael Schumacher has now cleared the people he was lapping and has got an open track in front of him. He can see where he is going. He's on his 64th lap. He's got 3 laps to go at the end of this to make it the 4th Ferrari win of the year 2000, as Alexander Wurz comes up behind Johnny Herbert's Jaguar and has a go. Wurz trying to improve his reputation this year.
Yes, and Coulthard slow out of the VDOT. They're going to touch surely.
Oh, off they go. That's tragic for Johnny Herbert, but he's kept it on the island. Brilliant. Now has he got the engine running? But that's cost Wurz his place. But it may be that... and Jenson Button, now where is he? Well, there is David Coulthard with Barrichello right behind him. They are 3rd and 4th. But we need to look back down the field a bit. Wurz is out of the race.
Yes, so that actually cleared the way a bit for Coulthard, but I think Barrichello is much quicker under braking, and surely he's going to nail David down into the VDOL later in this lap. David's going to have to keep to the inside and make this is a replay of Barrichello trying to... No, in fact, the camera then cuts away. Look, you're just always going to run wide, and well, I think Johnny must have known the laws of physics there, that the Benetton was surely, he should have going to come towards the outside of the corner, should have given him a little bit more space.
Well, it actually hasn't helped Johnny Herbert, because he is still not in the top 6 as a disconsolate Alexander Wurz walks in to make an explanation. Notice he's got 1 blue boot and 1 red boot. That's his good luck symbol. Hasn't done him much good in this race. Michael Schumacher on lap 65, 10 seconds now ahead of Mika Häkkinen as a result of weaving his way through the traffic better than the Finns. He's looking very, very good indeed for his 4th win of the year.
Button is out of the race. I can see on the computer car 10 has stopped, so Jenson Button is out of this race. And look, there is the dice for 3rd place as they go over the line. So Barrichello can't find a way through the spray. He didn't find a way up the inside into Vidal, and Coulthard has to somehow hang on for 1 more lap. Crucial for David, while he's struggling with his injuries or whatever he's got to carry, he needs to maximise his points in this race. He cannot afford to yield that place to Rubens Barrichello.
Well, David's had a first. He's had 3 thirds, one of which was disallowed. He's had a 3rd. He's driven magnificently this season. He's 3rd in the World Championship. If he can stay ahead of Rubens Barrichello on this final lap, it's going to help him. On this last lap but 1, it's going to help him as the Ferrari technicians look anxiously at their monitors, and Michael Schumacher is on his 66th and last lap but 1. That was the Ferrari. Now the next car up will be Mika Häkkinen's McLaren. There it is, and David Coulthard, and behind him is Rubens Barrichello.
So Barrichello, I think his best chance is at the next corner after this. So if he's got... Häkkinen's given up. Häkkinen's satisfied with 2nd place. He's now 13 second. He realises he's not going to leapfrog those 2 in the time available. And Barrichello just nowhere near close enough, even though he's much stronger on the brakes into this Vidal. So now Coulthard knows where his strengths and weaknesses are. Barrichello's got better traction. We've seen him overtake cars out of this chicane all afternoon. but Coulthard knows he's got to have just enough distance into Vidal, and he's guaranteed then this podium position. But now, can Barrichello get a run up? There's a lot of grip up to the inside of turn 1 in the rain here. It is amazing how late and deep you can go on the brakes. Barrichello, I expected him to pop out of the spray, but he just couldn't do so. Strong engine there in Coulthard's car. Barrichello driving absolutely blind, and total faith in the car in front.
Well, these two are not going to go the full race distance. Only Michael Schumacher, who is now on his last lap, and Mika Häkkinen are going to do that. But it certainly looks like being Ferrari, McLaren, McLaren, Ferrari, because look, on this last lap for him, David Coulthard is staying ahead of Rubens Barrichello as they exit turn 5 on this 13-turn corner track, and Michael Schumacher comes out of turn 8 with the German horns, the air horns blowing, the flags are waving. Schumi is their hero, and you can see Ferrari flags all round the track. A magnificent, if he gets there, and he hasn't got far to go, the Ferrari mechanics already crowding the pit lane. And Michael Schumacher is coming in to win his 4th race of the year, to extend his World Championship lead over Mika Häkkinen by a further 4 points, from 14 points to 18 points. Schumacher wins in Germany.
And Coulthard, I think, is going to maintain the 3rd. He took a 2nd somewhere out of Barrichello, and there's Coulthard 3rd, Barrichello 4th, and curiously 2nd place man coming over the line now, nearly a lap ahead. So Häkkinen, a slightly disconsolate cruise over the line. Great drive from Michael Schumacher.
And with Pedro de la Rosa in 6th position in the Arrows, behind Fisichella in 5th place, it means to say that Arrows magnificently in their newly liveried bright orange motor car have finished in the points for the first time this year to give Pedro de la Rosa his 2nd World Championship point in his 2nd year of Grand Prix racing. A very, very happy Ferrari team. Well, McLaren have got 10 World Championship points to Ferrari's 13. It could have been worse, but the fact remains that the gap in both championships between Schumacher in the drivers and Ferrari and McLaren in the constructors has increased. In fact, now Michael Schumacher is on 46 World Championship points to Mika Häkkinen's 28. David Coulthard is still 3rd. Rubens Barrichello is in 4th place as he was before. Ralf Schumacher is still 5th, and Fisichella is still in 10th position. Well, as ever in Grand Prix racing in Formula 1, a wet race, and particularly one that starts off dry and becomes wet all the other way round, has turned out to be immensely exciting and dramatic, and it really does look as though the tide after all these years has turned for Ferrari, led by the little man that you see walking into the Ferrari garage, Jean Todt, the Frenchman, who recruited Ross Brawn, the Englishman, Rory Byrne, the South African, Michael Schumacher, the German, to help him bring Ferrari back to the front, and he's certainly done it here.
Important day for Ferrari, because clearly McLaren were gathering pace and coming back at them with some energy after those dominant 3 wins by Michael in the first 3 races. And Ferrari today have nailed that. They've stopped that march, and I think it was a very significant day in this year's World Championship.
Welcome back. Well, there they go. Michael Schumacher, what a win in front of the home crowd. Up he goes. Elation.
Well, I guess if you're going to win a race, to win in front of your home crowd's the one to go for, isn't it?
Stand by for the national anthem. just reading in English motorsport, the sales of Ferrari have basically tripled since Schumacher has been driving for Ferrari.
I can
in Germany,
imagine.
I mean.
Silver grey one. He was taking the mickey out of the Italian national anthem.
Looking back at that race and then going back 2 weeks ago, McLaren's mistakes there with their pit stops tonight were very reminiscent of what Ferrari did 2 weeks ago. It's just reverse roles.
Yeah, and it was very unusual for Ross Brawn to make a bit of a cock-up like that with Barrichello too. I mean, that's he is the best in the business when it comes to that. One thing noticed about Schumacher and indeed the other two guys, not an ounce of wet. Their hair is as dry as a bone. Like, he is as fit as a fiddle. He has a semi-trailer that goes to each Grand Prix, and it's a big mobile gymnasium, and he actually, in between sessions or whenever he gets the mood, goes and does a workout with this mobile gymnasium.
Well, remember when we were in Maranello at the Ferrari factory and he had the Enzo Ferrari's old home that had been part of that, had been converted into a gym for him there.
Yeah.
Mika Hakkinen, look, you're a little stunned, I think. I really think they came to Germany thinking they could win here. He looks a little stunned, a little mystified about all this tonight.
I think it's going to be a pretty slow press conference with Mika's answers tonight.
This guy's put on a brave show, has he? I mean, considering he's carrying broken ribs, damaged ribs, I mean, we all know how painful that is. And in a car strapped in as tight as you are, it would be a pretty hard thing with all those G-forces pushing on you.
Well, that's the whole problem. I mean, you are strapped in extremely tight, but it's very violent in a modern Formula One car. You're getting bumped, and that's why you see them now. They have protective elbow pads, knee pads, shin pads, pads all over the place, because even though there's not much room in the cockpit, you do get thrown around quite a lot, and the G-forces are just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, very brave effort. So Ferrari celebrate, and can this be the year? A year that Ferrari fans have waited for so long. And as I've said before, nobody celebrates a win better than the Ferrari. Here's the result.
Well, another good win for Michael Schumacher over Mika Hakkinen. David Coulthard third, Rubens Barrichello fourth, Giancarlo Fisichella in fifth, and Pedro de la Rosa a point for Arrows in sixth spot. Drivers' Championship now. Michael Schumacher romps away, not romps away, but he extends that lead over Mika Hakkinen. David Coulthard third, Barrichello fourth, Ralf Schumacher in fifth, and Giancarlo Fisichella in sixth for Benetton. The Constructors' Championship, well, there's 10 points now separate Ferrari over McLaren, Williams in third, Benetton fourth, Jordan fifth, and BAR in sixth.
I guess we should really just remind people that perhaps don't watch every week that at the Melbourne Grand Prix this year we talked about to Eddie Jordan how important that point was. In fact, Tim Schroeder did a really great story on the value of a point. And Jackie Stewart was saying that the first point they got basically saved their neck. It was worth something in the value of $25 million.
Well, once they get into a certain situation with the points, they get travel concessions and all sorts of concessions fall their way. And that determines the pecking order down the pit lane, those with the points and those without the points. So, yes, 1 point can be unbelievably important.
Important too, I've had a number of letters of late of saying that the people coming in together, it seems unfair the way the pit lane is set out. But I mean, it is set out on performance, and that's the reason why.
Well, I mean, I think that's not only attributable to Formula One, but all sorts of racing has the same formula when it comes to that.
Yeah, I just answering the letters of people I've had. The reason being, obviously, the faster teams get the advantage of where they're placed in pit lane.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you have a look at BAR, who's still a little bit out of favour, I think they're right down in the boonies, and next to them is Minardi, and then as you get up towards normally it's the exit where they are, but I noticed in a couple of Grand Prix now that they're down at the entrance, the beginning of the pit lane. So whether this is something I don't really know, whether they get to choose where they are or whether it's a Bernie appointee, I don't know.
Well, I was just saying to you when we were in a commercial break there that there has been some talk of Villeneuve leaving the BAR team, and we did talk about the last Grand Prix that perhaps Benetton would be very interested now that Fabio is back there to have a look at him, and that rumour seems to be growing some strength now.
Yeah, I think it could be a bit premature because, I mean, Honda have only just been with them for the first year, not a company to be underestimated when it comes to developing a good engine. I would give them a little bit of time before I started jumping ship. I think, I mean, we've looked at Honda's performance in Formula 1 cars in the past when they get fair income about it. So if I was Villeneuve, I really would sort of, you know, stick in there for another year or so and give the Honda people time to give him the engine that he wants and deserves.
And they have said that they're going on a full-blown attack again. I mean, it'll be like the last time they were associated with McLaren.
When those boys go on a full-blown attack, they really go on a full-blown attack.
Yeah. And some good motor racing coming your way too. We're just waiting for the drivers to make their way into the interview areas for the unilateral interviews. But the Indianapolis 500, which we'll be covering, is just around the corner. We'll give you the dates of that just at the end of the telecast. But interesting enough now, the US Grand Prix, which you had so much success over there. You won East Coast, West Coast, and I think the North American one as well. The talk of the circuit there is just absolutely fantastic. But we'll just hold that for a moment because interviews are ready.
Michael, many congratulations on a great victory.
Thank you.
We could see the rain on TV, but what was it like to drive in such atrocious conditions out there?
I mean, the only critical circumstance was when it started to rain and you were out on slicks. And obviously none of us front riders wanted to go into the pits and take the chance to pick up rain tires and find out you go slower. As it was not a clear rain yet, we knew it would come, but whether it was already this one or whether it would have stopped and start later on again, nobody knew. So it was difficult. But obviously some drivers took on rain tires, and as soon as we saw they go faster, we went straight in.
Was there any problem with aquaplaning?
There was a few times, yes, because especially with my last set I did more than 30 laps, and I was pretty knackered at the end, and it was pretty difficult on certain parts, especially on the straight, but not as bad as what we have experienced in probably Silverstone. I think we have experienced very bad aquaplaning. Here it wasn't as bad.
And your first pit stop was very slow. Did you have a problem, or was that a change of strategy?
I don't know honestly what happened. I need to analyze you guys. You have the opportunity to see everything from outside and see the times. I sit there and I don't even count.